So, I got the yellow ribbon. So, it's okay.
How many times did you sit back just relaxing? Understand movements coming in, yeah, we got the packs in. I don't really wanna see no more traffic. Last pack just came in, let's get it out quick.
I had a hard
Wanna be okay, wanna be alright.
Number of
Today in the studio, we've got Mr. Jeffery O'Keefe Sr. Welcome back. This is your
Part 2.
second time.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And if you guys remember or you want to go watch the first episode, it is out there. But in it, we briefly discussed a movie that was being created. At that time, I don't even think that they had pulled the camera out yet. They were still in the writing stages, but you did tell us, like, as it gets closer, I'm going to keep you boys up to date on it. And it just released, man, like The Burial.
It's killing it right now on Amazon.
Yeah. So, number one movie, I think?
Yeah, it was labeled number one, with Amazon, of course. They're releasing it. And I don't know how they measure all that. But
Amazon's massive.
I do know Rotten Tomatoes is a strong rating service, and it's 90 plus in the Rotten Tomatoes zone, and of course it's been getting a lot of accolades on Facebook and different sites. And matter of fact, I ran across one on Rolling Stone. It was Rolling Stone Media, I believe.
Yeah.
And there were over 25,000 impressions on that, and there were 2,400 comments.
That's a lot for actual readers.
Largely positive, and there was, what blew me away was there was 2,400 shares, where people were sharing it out there. And so, and of course, there's a number of other sites out there that are getting a lot of comments and feedback with different sources out there. So the initial indication out of the chute is that the movie's coming out pretty strong. And but you never know long range. But, when they were putting this together, I believe that Amazon had hopes of this being an Oscar contender.
So whenever Amazon acquired it, like, more, you were there pretty much every step of the way. I mean, you were one of the kids in the movie that they dictated, but it was the rights to it was purchased before Amazon, right?
Well, first of all, I wasn't one of the kids in the movie. They did show some family, but there
could have been you though.
There wasn't any particular identification.
I mean, to me, as
we're going to say it is.
The only one.
There he is.
The only one that
he was in the window right there.
The big J was there, Jerry. He's the main.
I feel like
he's the main feed right there.
I feel like for Jamie Foxx, was it Django? What was it? Django. That performance and the performance here and The Burial was incredible. His performance, the way he played the attorney, and it was just cool. That's what got me. And then Tommy Lee Jones, hadn't seen him in a while. You know what? Men in Black, love it. He come right back, did this performance, and he played it. I think he played it pretty well.
Yeah, I do too. And he was given a script to work with, and my brother Justin and I went to New Orleans for a couple of days of the filming. And when he first walked up to us, the first thing he said was, "Now, when y'all see this movie, you're not going to be seeing your dad." And I think, while he didn't elaborate, I think his message was, if he's going to do a character, he's going to study that character.
Right.
And he looked at videos of my dad and read about him, and he knew that script was not really going to be projecting, what he...
Mr. Jerry shot down warplanes, dude. That's like a different man.
Well,
compared to today's average man.
It just was... This movie was focused on the trial, basically on the trial, and really really kind of focused on the attorney more so than, in fact, there were liberties taken, obviously, which it says on the front end. It's inspired by real events. In fact, the National Funeral Directors Association, which we're a member of, put a notice out to its entire membership nationwide to be aware that this movie was coming out and that it's inspired by real events. And the reason they do that is because a lot of the times when a movie's made like that, which is inspired by, they know that a lot of liberties are taken. And they wanted for the industry, and in fact, they encouraged the industry to watch the movie, to be aware in the event that they get questions from the general public, because they didn't know what was in it, and they were, had a general concern to just alert their membership to be aware. That's all, So yeah, I mean, it definitely had some creative directing.
Let's go in this though. Your dad was, at the time, your dad was still. I mean, was he still working?
Oh yeah. So, I talked to my dad about retirement and that sort of thing, and he said the O'Keefes die on the job. He said, and I think the moral of his story was, whether you're actively engaged in this business or that business. I mean, the reality is you got to stay engaged and stay busy and productive, and I think that was his message. And he used to say, the older you got, the more you needed to speed up rather than slow down because you don't have much time left.
It's kind of good. That's good.
That's good. Gangster, actually.
Yeah.
Did he? Do you remember? So was it 95? You were in your 40s, 50s?
Well, I spent my 39th birthday on the witness stand during that trial.
Okay.
And I was, deposed for 2 days. So we had to
palm
break.
Sweaty?
Pardon me?
Was your palm sweaty?
Well, I mean, I don't remember that being the case, but I mean, anytime you get put on that stand.
Did you go into it feeling like you were wronged, like you took it personal, like you were there to get it back? Or?
Oh, well, we definitely knew the facts were on our side about, the breach of the contract. I mean, that was a foregone conclusion. There was no doubt about that.
So let's do a little explanation real quick for everyone watching that hasn't seen the movie yet, because it is a little confusing. The original contract, do you want to explain that?
Well, see, that's where a lot of the liberty comes in, because when this movie first began being promoted, they were saying that, it was a bankrupt funeral home owner suing on a handshake deal. Well, none of that's true. I mean, none of that. I mean, none of my family's businesses, my dad's insurance, the funeral, none of that, no bankruptcies anywhere. And it wasn't a handshake deal. It was an actual insurance contract. Most funeral homes throughout the nation had small, at least in the South, had small burial insurance companies affiliated with them, and so my father formed his own burial insurance company, and then he formed what's called a legal reserve company, which basically you put up reserves to ensure the payment of the claims, and so once you have a reserve, there were limitations what a funeral home could write, and so when you form the reserve company, you can write larger policies, and so he knocked on funeral homes' doors all around the state and suggested that they write into his company once they hit their limits, and so at a certain point, he had probably 130 funeral homes throughout the state producing funeral insurance policies into his company. And some of those funeral insurance companies he purchased. And he purchased the one in Jackson with Wright and Ferguson. And when he made that purchase of that life company, it also came with the agreement that they would continue to produce insurance into his company.
Did your dad ever talk to you while he was doing this stuff and ask for a sounding board? Or seems like a lot for insurance for him buying up these companies and
No. I wasn't really involved with the insurance company back in those days.
So he was doing that himself, going up there and doing these deals.
Yeah, he and my mother formed that company from scratch, and he started developing it, knocking all those doors around the state, and built that company. And so he had a contract that they would continue to produce, and then it had been ratified. You know, it's like I don't know if it's a 5 or a 10-year contract, but then it had been ratified and renewed, not once but twice. So it was an ongoing contract, and so what happened was you have this Canadian funeral corporation that came into the United States, and they started buying up funeral homes.
Canadians need to stay over on the other side.
And they bought Riemann over here, you know.
Do you remember what year that was?
It was 1988, I want to say.
Okay.
Let me think about that.
So we were
No, I think it might have been, it was 89, or, you know, right in that area, I believe, you know, is when that, somewhere around 88, 89.
Guys, you can go to theburial.org and find out the trial that y'all wrote up, correct?
And so what they were doing was they would go into respective areas, and they would buy, you know, a carriage trade business, as it's referred to, as a well-established funeral home, maybe multiple locations, and they'd create a regional partner. And then they would give that regional partner their checkbook to run around buying other funeral homes. And so that's how they were kind of growing from a grassroots. And so, you know, they had acquired the one here on the coast, that operation, and then they went up to Jackson and they bought that funeral home up there that my dad had that contract with. And so it wasn't very long, and they walked in and they said, well, hey, we're not writing into this company anymore. We're going to write into our own company, which was a breach of that contract, you know. I mean, he said, look, I got a contract.
Yeah, so that's what triggered it all right
That's
there.
what started the conflict.
Do you know how the Riemanns, I mean, they're kind of like, so if you see the billboard, you see the Bradford O'Keefe family, you see the Riemanns. And so they're just like operators. Yeah. So they're not owners.
They're like employees.
Okay. So that's.
But they don't, you know, they don't advertise that, you know, they're on like a.
I never knew about it.
No. Well, they don't really want to advertise that because they bank on using the goodwill of the family that they bought, you know, and that's, you know, I'm not going to say it's deceptive, but I mean it's, you know, people don't know.
Do you have your deeds to your properties?
Yeah.
Okay. You have them in a lockbox?
Safe.
Okay.
Put them in a safe deposit box.
So you pay for all your maintenance to all your properties when something happens. Y'all pay for it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which is a lot.
Well, and that's one point that the movie drives home. You know, I was asked that night, what are your takeaways from that movie, you know, at the Q&A. And I said, well, there were two that were very strong for me, and one was basically the independent funeral home versus the big corporate. That's what this whole movie was about. I mean, it was a big corporation versus a small
David and Goliath.
Small independent. And so I said, what happens in a lot of instances, you got a publicly traded company that, you know, they're able to issue stock and raise money.
Yeah, big time.
And so they've got a lot of financial resource to deploy in competitive situations and this and that, you know, a small funeral home operator, they just don't have exposure to that. And it puts them at a real disadvantage.
And they can hit a value of their place and hand them a big check, say, would you want this check?
Well, sure, yeah. And you know, there's a place for the corporation. I mean, there's a lot of businesses that are mom and pop operations, and they may have children, but, you know, their children may have become doctors or dentists or this or that, and they don't have anyone to carry it on. But yet there's an operating business. And so the corporation provides an avenue for them to be able to hand that business off and let it continue, and then they're able to retire and go on. So, I mean, there is a necessary place for the larger corporations that, you know, that for succession purposes and that sort of thing. but then there, you've got the other, family operated businesses that, continue on, and some remain for generations like ours, and then and so it's a mix. It's a mix out there across the nation.
Competitive world.
Yeah. I mean, it is, and like I say, that's one of the disadvantages is going up against, and some of that came out at the trial, and you see, I saw a question this afternoon before I came up here when I was having dinner. I was just glancing over some of the responses to the movie, and somebody said, "Well, why the $400 million?" I mean, they didn't, even after having seen the movie, they didn't understand why would somebody levy a verdict like that. And
principle.
Well, no, I mean, the jury was incensed by what we put on as evidence. And
Was there any correlation to the profit plan to I guess go with the church that was selling the funeral insurance? Was that law, I guess, real, or because they said there was like a $1.2 billion projected profit on that, and I mean, and if that's the case, then it would make sense for a higher verdict and a higher judgment to be put out. I would think, because $400 million ain't a lot whenever you're talking about billion.
Yeah. Well, you said the key word. That was projected. Yeah. That wasn't in play. That deal had just been signed. So it wasn't as though that was money in the bank. That was a projection. And but yeah, that was really and truly part of the equation. That
Matt, before social media marketing, before the tracking your data, they were doing that to people in neighborhoods.
But they kind of touched on some of it, and it was a situation that specifically was put on at the trial where the acquisition company went into a city where there were 3 independent funeral homes, and basically they quietly bought all 3. And so they had a monopoly in that town.
Did y'all know about like this group before all this stuff happened? Like, did you know they were coming around, and then how many times did they knock on y'all's door? Your dad probably, I mean, it was...
Well, I've been a student of the industry my whole life,
yeah.
And so we're members of associations, and we go to conventions, and they were having conventions where all 3, there at the time, there were 3 big major operators, SCI, security,
a corporate group.
Yeah, corporate group. SCI was Service Corporation International. I'm sorry.
No, you're fine.
Hung up on that.
I'm kind of fascinated with. I'm fascinated.
There were 3 big corporations out there. There was Service Corporation International, which was out of Houston, Texas. And then you had Stewart Enterprises, which was home based in New Orleans, Louisiana. And then the third one was Lowen out of Canada.
The one you beat.
And so those 3, but I would go to a convention, and the presidents of those 3 corporations would be there together on a panel, talking about the industry and whatnot. And so, I was afforded the opportunity to meet them and shake their hands and greet them and know who they were. And so, that was, a great honor, to meet people in a position like that, So I knew them ahead of all of this other, but I mean,
that would have made it worse.
But
I felt like I needed to have some closed door conversations.
What we didn't know about was some of the tactics that were being deployed that came to surface.
Trying to buy you a steak maybe
during the trial, and like I mentioned, the situation where they went into the town and bought all 3, and then raised those prices. So if somebody was unhappy here, they went over there. They're basically getting the same price, And then in another town where they had a real competitor that they didn't own, they kept the prices a little lower. And so, see, that was kind of seen as like an antitrust predatory practice.
Do they still do that stuff now?
Well, I can't say.
Okay.
I can't say whether they do or they don't. I mean, I don't really can't say. I mean, I just
Yeah.
we don't.
It seems like that's what everybody does now. They still do it. For me, I'm just me saying this is like because it's got to be like it's competition.
Well, one of the difficult things is knowing is someone owned publicly or are they owned privately. You don't know. You don't really know who it is you're dealing with unless you have a way of knowing. And there's no, as far as I know, regulatory disclosure of that information. I mean, you can look at public corporations and see who they own. Like, Parklawn right now, Parklawn Corporation. You can go on their website and see that, our competitor's owned by them out of Canada.
So now I'm curious, how is Jamie Foxx? I mean, is he cool? Is he what? Is he serious? Is he funny?
Oh yeah, man, he's a hoot. I mean,
because like he's been in some serious roles. Like
every
Any Given Sunday.
Every time he came into the courthouse down in New Orleans for the filming, he had an entourage walking with him, and one of them had a big boom box rocking. I mean, they were rocking everywhere they went.
That's awesome.
And,
He's living it, man.
Oh yeah. And of course,
he's got to be getting up there in age, right?
He's a young man. But anyway, he of course I'm sure you saw where he had the medical issue.
Yeah.
And nobody really knows what that
could have been a clone.
About it.
Yeah, we just don't know what. Nobody, I don't think. There's never really been any disclosure.
He does host like this reality show or some kind of game show that me and Jean were watching for a while, and then all of a sudden it stopped. But it was right around the same time that he was filming this, I would imagine. So I don't really know what the medical.
Well, ours was in the bag, or
he had already done that.
Yeah, that was already done. He was already. I think he was just about to complete another movie, if not two. He stays. I mean, he rocks and rolls. I mean,
Big Jeff. They had a thing with him though when he disappeared for a while. Is like the Illuminati took him, and there was a body double. That's a true thing.
I heard some of that stuff.
Wait a minute.
I heard some of that stuff. I don't know. I mean, look, I don't know.
It's real though, guys.
I don't know about all that.
But they had the thing. They said Jamie Foxx. He got sick, like a brain. He had to go to the hospital, and then they took some photos of him with like not looking anything like him, and people were like, the Illuminati got him, and
they just replaced him with a lookalike.
This show is facts only. Okay.
Yeah.
But Jamie Foxx could be a clone.
Yeah, I don't know, but he was pretty real in our movie and with our filming. He was the real deal, And I think you'll appreciate.
Did he shake your hand like tough?
I mean,
because in one of those pictures you were throwing like one of these kind of.
Oh,
that's all.
Yeah. I don't recall all that and being in the picture, but no. I mean, he was great to visit with. We made little packages for each one of the actor, the primary actors and the producer and the producer with Amazon, the director Maggie Betts. We gave them one of her history books, cookbook.
Yeah, we got some of that.
He got we got two new fly swatters, guys. Shout them out.
Nice.
Shout them out right here. We actually use these. Got them downstairs, but this is cool.
So did they do anything for you as the family? Like, did Amazon come in and make it special for you guys? Or
Yeah. I mean, they were very hospitable with us, and we had a really nice dinner. Second night of the filming, and the first night, Willie Gary had a dinner and had a group there, and so we went to dinner with Willie and his group, and then the second night, all of us were with the Amazon.
That's nice.
Hosted the dinner the second.
Do you ever think you're going to have your own group one day?
I kind of feel like I do.
Yeah, I feel like you do as well.
I kind of feel like I have a little group.
It seems like Jamie Foxx.
I mean, they don't walk everywhere I walk, like they do. But
how many people do you think Jamie Foxx had? When about 10?
As entourage, as you would call them?
Bodyguard.
Well, I mean, I'm not sure what all their roles were, but I would say
One
he
of them
had
was definitely his cousin.
I think he had 5 or 6 guys with him, pretty much moving around.
So Lee Elder told us, the owner of the Yankees, when he became friends, there's a little story on that. He was just a part of his entourage. He wasn't even he was not even a scout. He was he was an entourage. He flew everywhere he went. He had about 5 or 6 guys, and he just gave him opportunity. But he was always in his entourage because he always wanted to have his guys by him. But you always knew that he was here and his guys were here. But anytime that what was the owner's name, Matt, of the Yankees?
Oh gosh, Steinbrenner.
So when he wanted to hang out, you hung out. When he didn't want to hang out, they were still around, and because he had properties, and that's the same thing Jamie Foxx has.
Well, you got to appreciate that anybody that elevates to a role like what they have to have good support. Just from a standpoint like Peter Roy. I mean he's scouting from all over. He's got to have one man. It takes a team. It takes a team, and that's the same thing with the movies and actors and they don't all work the same, but people work at different levels of capacity, and Jamie, from all indications, is and has been very, very busy in making movies, and he's just got a lot going on, and so I could see where he's got a lot of.
Do you feel like out of all the actors that are available, like he was the right one for the job for displaying Willie?
Yeah, I don't. Just off the cuff, I don't know who else could have done a better job. I mean,
Does Willie have? I mean, he has a big entourage too, or you would think?
Yeah, they all have
his own plane.
So I'm saying, I think Big Jeff needs to get Chris as one of his members and have his own entourage.
All gold pinky rings.
Yeah, because every time I see you, when you bought the funeral home in Bay St. Louis, and I was at Tailgaters, and you showed up to pick up a pizza. You didn't have an entourage, and you were smiling. You were like, I just got Bay St. Louis, and you're very humble, very excited. But I think you should have 5 guys with you, all wearing suits. You know what I mean?
Driving you around. You have a driver?
Well, no. But we do have. We've got a great team. They don't follow me all around like that, but we do work together as a team, and we're blessed to have them. I guarantee. We couldn't do what we do without our team. There's no.
I just think you need to have them all the time with you.
Oh yeah. That'd
just
be
for a public appearance.
It's got to be one foot behind you.
I don't think I'm.
Look like a boxer walking down the tunnel.
You know why Jamie Foxx probably had the boombox? He wanted montage music.
Yeah. They might have been filming a documentary on Jamie Foxx, behind the scenes while he's making.
It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all. And
I want a team of people around me.
And I think Willie has got a lot of his life being recorded right now.
Now, is he still practicing, or is he?
No, he's still practicing.
Is he tall guy or short guy? I couldn't.
He's short. He's shorter. Yeah,
he's shorter guy.
Yeah. But dynamite comes in small packages sometimes.
That's right.
You know that. And I tell you what, he was dynamic. I mean, he really was. He was. You could liken him to a street fighter.
Did your dad fire him? Really?
No, that was all made up.
So there was a lot of that you kind of went over after the movie. That was like, here's the fact, here's the fiction. Can you kind of go over a little without ruining or spoiling for anybody maybe who hasn't seen it? But the attorney was a female attorney.
Yeah,
that was one of them.
Well, Maggie Betts, she's a black female director, and she wanted to integrate a powerful black woman into this movie, and so that's where she came in with Journey and everything as the lead counsel for Lowen, but in reality, there wasn't a female on, at least in the courtroom, but they did have some powerful lawyers. Now I will say that.
Okay, how about your mom though? You said your mom was involved in insurance too, right?
Well, she co-founded the company with my dad.
But did she kind of work at the funeral home at times?
She actually played the organ at the funeral home for a while.
I wish they would have showed that, dude. Like they made it sound like mom just stays at home. That's the only thing is they had the mom stays at home, which she was like kind of like the sounding board for your dad at night.
Yeah.
But it seems like your mom, then you said that she founded an insurance company. Throw that girl in there a little bit.
Well, I mean, it was primarily my dad, but he wanted to include her with his venture. And so the two of them formed that, but he certainly was the catalyst in building it. I mean, she wasn't banging doors on the road, but he was, and that, it took a lot of work to build that company.
And I'll tell you this, guys, this is another thing. When he was growing up, the house they lived in, everybody thought it was like they had these, all their own bedrooms. They kind of had it like it was a dorm, correct?
Yes. All my sisters basically lived upstairs on the second story, and the guys were downstairs in a couple rooms with bunk beds. Yeah,
so guys got to keep that in mind about the O'Keefes. They grind it. And I know that, like, another story, the thing, too, is when you left our last podcast and I was asked you, I said, man, I wasn't talking about your truck. You had Yukon or Tahoe, whatever you have. It's a really nice truck. But I was like, is he going to pull up an S500? What's this guy pulling up in? And you're like, nah, I had one for a little while. Wasn't me. And then you told me these things I'll never forget. And I tell people all the time, is like, was a custodial of y'all's family generation.
Yeah. I mean, that's what attracted me to the business. To be honest, as I was growing up, the insurance company, my father had grown probably $100 million in assets, and the funeral home operation was much smaller. I think we had 2 locations, maybe a third that was the crematory, and so a lot less asset size and all that. But I felt like 2 things. One, we all got to do something in life. And I observed some of the funeral directors working in that business that were career funeral directors, and I felt like that they were as well respected in the community as anybody, and that it's a respectable job to have, and secondly, that was the business in our family lineage that succeeded generational continuance. My dad was a 4th generation in the business from Edward O'Keefe that migrated from Ireland on the heels of the potato famine and began the business back in Ocean Springs, and so I kind of felt like that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool history, and that too kind of drew me to.
Could you tell me what a funeral director does? I mean, I know they're the boss, but can you give us like the listeners some tips of like what a funeral director does?
Well, I mean, they're not necessarily the boss. I mean, they are there to.
I mean, you're the boss. I know that. We know Big Jeff's the boss.
They're there to help guide the family through the process of handling the loss of a loved one.
Insurance and all.
Well, insurance is quite often a part of it, but there's people that don't have insurance. That we have to help people from all walks of life, and so and you see everything from A to Z out there in that regard, and so that's another nice thing about what we do. We work with people. Some people used to say from the billionaire to the beggar man, or whatever, But basically, it's A to Z of the spectrum of life.
Yeah, you buried my grandma. You just recently buried my brother's dad, which Doug did a great job over in the Bay of St. Louis. Mm-hmm. Chris was amazing. But, I mean, my grandma, my grandpa buried, I'm a Landry, Duron. Right. I think he buried my whole entire family.
But, I mean, what we try to do is, certainly be good listeners and help offer guidance to families to create a service that's meaningful to them, and whatever that is, and offer suggestions to maybe even enhance that, and of course, I think the last time we were on the show, one of the things that I was really encouraging people to do was to try to gain stories from their elders, because our elders are carrying so much information from their lives and exposure to what they've experienced over their lives, and sometimes if you could just sit down with a recorder with one of your elders and just start kind of picking their brain about, well, how was it back in the
I know
day?
whenever we had Peter Roy on, and he's sitting there telling us about a night in Vietnam out there.
Yeah, that
like with his
Exactly.
gun in his hand.
Exactly.
Dude, that was one of the.
He was saying he was scared, and that's what I'm saying. That was a 2-hour and 17-minute podcast, and we just had to let him. Of course, he talked about, it's like here, you don't always have to talk about the burial and stuff like that. He went into like, we were kind of like, what was the scariest thing you discovered? And it's like nighttime, like
Vietnam,
in front of his hair,
raining.
Yeah, and he had to go, and he knew they were going to catch him. No matter what he did, he was running from it, and they caught him.
Wow,
it's fascinating, and that was a good one, and so I'm fascinated with, you said the funeral directors being powerful people in the community.
I didn't say powerful. I mean, I don't. I
Respected.
Respected.
Yeah, I would say they're as respected as any type of individual. That
Have you ever had to like go full on embalm yourself, or because that's one thing. Like I would be like, man, you got me here.
Have you ever done it?
Lose me there.
Well, I mean, I'm not licensed to do that, but when I first entered the business. You worked as an apprentice, and so I worked. I did some of the technical work in the prep room, quite a bit of it, as a matter of fact. I mean, I think I could probably do you, but it would.
I'm good, man. I'm gonna do like that.
But I mean, I'm not trained to do that, nor am I licensed to do that. So I don't really do that.
Did you see that nature funeral home that had like 150 bodies in it?
I saw that.
That's maybe something that I might be thinking about doing.
I missed that. So the things that
certainly you don't want to be stacking people.
They've got.
You didn't see that?
No, tell me about it.
So I forgot what city it's in, but a funeral home is like a natural funeral home. It was supposed to be a whole different way. Like people do the organic diapers.
Yeah,
it's one of them hipster moves.
Yeah.
So then they just did like a funeral home where they found like 160 bodies stacked up in this funeral home, and it was just rotten and decay. And they were decayed. They had to test them by their blood.
So I'm thinking more for
Sad.
me. I know you've seen the ones where the casket like turns into a tree, like you get buried with and the tree comes out. Have you seen that?
Yeah, I have.
Y'all sell those?
We could probably arrange that.
And
for
then
you.
I like that style.
I'm thinking that or a Vikings funeral where they push you out. There's an archer.
That's the one for you.
Yeah, I think
that's
so too.
definitely the one for you. I think.
As long as we're on the same.
Could
The
you
only
do that?
question is, do you want that on the back bay or the front
Back
beach,
bay, I
Could you do that if you really?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you might have to have a permit.
There's got to be rules to it, I would think.
I would think. There is permissible burial at sea. You can have a burial at sea.
So what about
But there's guidelines for that.
people say that I can bury myself in the backyard and it becomes tax exempt. Is that true or false?
Well, I mean I think in general that's discouraged.
Okay, I'm just asking questions.
Yeah. I mean, it's the bottom line is you got to follow protocols. There's you can be very involved with the disposition of a loved one, but you do got to follow the protocols, and so. There is some of that going on with the natural burials and that sort of thing. I don't know. I don't see that really flourishing in our area. I mean, there is some of it, but not. I think by and large, the big thing is burial or cremation going on presently, and so there's a lot of other ancillary types of means of disposition. But you see some of that.
You just go to Jeffery O'Keefe and let Big Jeff handle it.
You see some of that in large cities and metropolitan areas quite often. And
so I'm gonna hit you another one.
Okay.
Kevin's got a text on there. If you hit him, could you read that one out to him? But
Yeah.
I'm gonna hit you with this one. When you were so our buddy is an archaeologist. He has Morgan Square in downtown Biloxi. It's his places that insurance office is there. My question to you, though, is like when you're digging a hole for the funeral, have you ever found any, not bodies, but have you ever found any like treasures, old guns, coins?
No, I don't recall having uncovered anything.
Because I mean, you're digging.
Significant, yeah, like that. But here again, that's I'm not usually on the shovel myself. I mean, we have a team, and we've got guys that handle a lot of the the grave opening and closings and that sort of thing, and so I haven't ever heard of any like real unusual finds in that regard, but I mean, one thing that we did encounter is families sometimes by choice, make a decision to bury more than one person into the same grave over time, which there is no law against that. It's called grave reclamation, where you reclaim a grave. And
but it's got to be family.
Well, it certainly has to. You've got to have authority to be able to do it. You can't just go burying off once again, unguided. You've got to have the right to do it. And so, but that seemed a little unusual. Where you're having to excavate somebody who's within the grave and replacing them back in with another.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it seems like.
Yeah.
Seems like a lot.
Well, I mean, it just it is permissible, is what I'm saying. Like in Louisiana, there's a lot of above ground burial, and so they oftentimes have a little repository where they'll leave the casket. I think there's a law over there where the casket's got to remain for 1 year and 1 day. Now, from a practical standpoint, quite often they leave they stay a lot longer time, and then they ultimately move them into the repository to create a new spot, and they memorialize people on the front plate, granite of the door, and then when that granite fills up, they put it on the side, put another door, keep going. And so it's just a philosophical decision people make on whether it's one grave, it's two, or multiple, and what type and style and that sort of thing.
Do you own a grave? Do you own graves?
Well, I own 3 cemeteries.
Cemeteries.
Do you have your grave? Do you have your grave already?
I do.
You know where it's at, and like looking at it, and is it by your feather?
I think so.
How's that feel?
You go out there and look at it?
It feels a little permanent. It feels a little permanent.
Do you have you have cemeteries, and I said graves. Sorry, that's what I was pointing for. Those cemeteries. So you have your own. Do you have your quotes on it?
Pardon me?
Like you're saying, like
no, the headstone.
Yeah.
No.
What do you know what it is?
No. We haven't. My wife and I haven't actually designed the headstone.
Yeah, I would be hesitant. I'm in no hurry to get there.
Well, I'm not. I think she might have.
I'm going to be cremated. And I already made my plan. I'm going to be cremated, and I'm going to be at Big Jeff's funeral home, and I'm going to do a video that I'll pre-record.
If you're watching this, I'm gone.
Yeah, I'm going to start just talking to other people, calling some people out, have my moments, that's how I'm going to do it. I really am. I'm going to pre-record something the next few years, and I'm going to save it in a digital file, and I'm going to send
You'll
it
probably want to update that later.
All right, so we're going to go back to the movie real quick because we did have some questions for you. All right, what's the most interesting parts of the story that were not included?
Well, for me, one of the most, the whole question came up a little earlier about, well, how did they get to $400 million? And because I don't think the movie really explained that succinctly as well as it could have been. I mean, it's certainly there for most people. I think they get it, but what really happened was, the jury came back in with a verdict of $260 million, and they handed a piece of note paper to the judge, and they had determined that they wanted to award $100 million in actual damages and $160 million in punitive. But what they didn't, they got confused on the rules, and they were only supposed to have been levying the actual damages. And so the judge called both legal teams back into his chambers, and he said, the jury's confused. They thought they were issuing actual and punitive, when they were only supposed to have issued actual damages. What do y'all want to do about it? And so our team huddled up, and so we came back to the judge and we said, well, look, Judge, which, by the way, the judge, his name was James E. Graves, and which was so apropos for this case, but nevertheless, we said, well, Judge, if they waive any and every right to appeal whatsoever, we'll go ahead and accept that $260 million. And I said, if they don't want to do that, then we will accept the $100 million actual, and we can go back in there and put on a punitive damage argument. And so he went over to their side, and they pretty quickly told the judge, we can't waive any right to appeal, And he says, are you telling me you want to go back in there with that jury? He said, get my robe. And so we went back in, and of course, Mr. Gary got up in front of the jury, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, he said, I want to thank y'all. It's been a long trial. It's been 8 weeks, and you've listened to all of the facts, and you've found for the plaintiff, and we thank you for that. But ladies and gentlemen, you cannot slap these people on the hand. You got to hit them where it hurts, in the wallet. I'm asking you to consider $1 billion in punitive damages. And then that's when he was, putting on the evidence with the projection of the NBC deal forecast in billions. Yeah. And so the jury was out for quite some time, and the jury foreman was a Canadian. And so they came back in and they levied the $400 million. And so, shortly, I guess weeks after the trial, we were able to contact the lead foreman and say, what took y'all so long back there? I mean, why were y'all back there so long? And he said, well, we were 11-1 to award $1 billion in punitive damages. And he said, but the Canadian talked to the jury, and he said, ladies and gentlemen, we can do that. But if you levy that kind of verdict, it's just going to be so absurd, the amount of it. It's going to get thrown out. And he said, I would like to see Mr. O'Keefe get the money. And he said, if you award him somewhere like $400 million, the likelihood that they're going to meet and settle it for less is very likely, and Mr. O'Keefe will actually get paid and have his wrong righted. And so, and they heard that, and that's what they did. And so that's what they wound up doing. And
did you ever get to touch the money that they bring in trucks? Did you ever get to touch the actual cash or hold the check?
I did. I held the first installment.
So was there an immediate life change, or a little bit, or was everything hunky dory normal, nothing, no drastic difference?
You mean
quality of life?
Could have went on some vacations.
Yeah, something. Was the day after different than the day before?
Yeah, we want to know. Did you buy a new motorcycle?
Was there some elation? Yeah, I'm gonna tell you, there was some elation. We were, first of all, there was relief. There was a huge relief that, this thing was, it wasn't over. It wasn't over. Actually, the gyrations that ensued after that verdict, which the movie itself just goes from the beginning of the trial to the verdict. Yeah. And that's where I told Amazon, I said, man, you guys missed the boat. This thing went on for 4 years prior to trial. And I said the ramifications after the trial were as riveting as the trial itself. I said, you had a mini-series here, man.
Right,
You made the movie.
You were our age. I'm 37.
Yeah, I'm twice your age.
No, during the time.
Oh, yeah.
So,
I was 39.
But imagine that, like Big Jeff family just got money. They won this case. How many people? They had cell phones back then. How many people blowing you up? Can I borrow $50?
Well, here's the thing. I mean, there were 9 plaintiffs.
Yeah,
9. Plaintiffs, and for the money to be, spread among, and then the attorneys, were 45% of the settlement.
Willie ain't. Gary's not doing bad.
Yeah.
Gary's not doing bad. So here's what I was disappointed in. I'll say that I'm like, dude, we got to get Hal on the podcast, and then come to find out, Hal's a fictitious character.
No, Hal's a real character.
Oh, was he? So
yeah, he's a real character, and he really did recommend hiring Willie Gary.
That's what I was going to wonder. How did your dad get down there?
I thought Hal was next to us, so I gave a box of candy to his wife.
Okay.
But it wasn't Hal.
No.
So I gave her. I thought it was Hal right there, and we're like,
no,
gotta get Hal on the podcast.
I tried to get Hal down here. He lives in Jackson, Mississippi, but he had a recent back surgery and he was unable to travel. But he has done a couple of interviews up there. But Hal, what had happened is we were set for trial, and so Lowen hired 2 black attorneys who happened to be legislators, either in the Senate or the House. And there's a law in Mississippi that if you hire a lawyer who is also a legislator, you can postpone the trial until after the legislative season. And so we were set to go to trial, and they hired these key individuals, and that's when Hal walked in, and he made that comment. He really made the comment. He said, "Man, they out-blacked me." And so that's when he thought of hiring Willie Gary, because he had seen Willie's tape from the Rich and Famous, and he just felt like we needed a higher power, on this case.
It's important, though. I mean, to work in a crowd.
Did Willie really give some reluctance towards accepting the case?
He really did.
And was 45% on the table the whole time, or was that part of the negotiations to accept it?
Well, it was a team of attorneys. It was a team of attorneys that were involved in this case over the 4-year period coming to trial, and Willie came in, maybe 2 or 3 months out of trial. So we kind of had to bring him up to speed. We had already been to Canada and taken all their depositions and all this and that, and so we really kind of had to bring him up to speed on where we were on all of it,
Was your dad actually on the yacht?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was true?
Yeah.
He was by himself, or were you with him?
Well, I was there in Canada while we were doing the depositions, and Ray invited us onto his boat for dinner that night. And my dad had gone up prior to us taking the trip to take the depositions, but to try to settle the matter. But Ray wouldn't. He said, he said, "Look, you sell me your funeral homes, and we'll resolve it."
And it was actually $6 million.
I think something like that.
Now, do you think that's a move that he had mastered?
What's
like
that?
Stealing second base? I mean, you got certain players that's what they do. They steal bases.
Well, this was a very complex case. I mean, and it, I know Peter Roy, you say went 2 hours, but we might be 3 or 4 if I really lay out, the way all this went down. But I'm hoping to go, write that one day.
Hey man, if you ever need any help, look.
And there's a
talk to text now is a thing.
There's a there's just a lot of fascinating elements that just aren't told and what you've seen, and there really needs to be kind of a cohesive flow of start to stop.
Well, I did ask Jordan afterwards, and I was like, "Hey man, were you one of those little grandkids running around?" He's like, "Brooks, I wasn't even born yet." but I did say, "Is this the first time you've seen it?" He said, "No, that you guys got to watch a screening but it was a different movie. So they did alter it some, correct?
Well, we were successful in having them remove 2 parts that just to us were non-negotiable, and one of them was, you might remember when the government guys came and were telling him, "Don't you know you're supposed to have so much in reserve and this and that?" Yeah. Well, they had a little part in there where they were tacking a suspension notice of the license.
Oh, you ain't let that shit happen
on the funeral home.
Yeah.
And I said, "Look, man, I'm running a business here, and it's one thing to insinuate, but you're not gonna, I can't live with you tacking because our license has never been suspended like that, and I said I can't go for that, and then another one was, and they still left part of that in there, but it was earlier in a stronger fashion where they were suggesting that my dad had used company reserves, the people's money, to invest in a savings and loan that went bad, that's actually an illegal act. So here they're taking my dad, who was an honorable, businessman, and
portraying him as different,
showing him doing an illegal act. And I said, I can't.
You're right.
I can't do that. I said, I can't. I'm not going to be able to tolerate that. And so they still had part of that in there while they had him on cross-examination. But the reality is when you're on cross-examination, they're going to come at you guns blaring. And I think that's kind of what the movie does project, more so than, the discrepancy of that allegation.
I went there and did, I think it was around my birthday, September 25th. I did my 2 years continuous education. So I got property casualty, health, and life. And they had the insurance. You have to do the ethics and stuff.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want that to be portrayed in your business that serious.
Oh, well, I mean, like I say, it was
almost like you're stealing. Yeah.
The part where he has his cable cut off or takes a third mortgage to pay the attorney, none of that's true. All of that was just
stretching,
put in there to make him appear downtrodden, so that, that all of this becomes a bigger impact.
But he did have to pay a lot of attorneys out of his pocket for a long time.
Well, he did, but he didn't have to take no third mortgage on his house to do it, and so, I mean, it was a long, protracted case, there's no doubt about it. And it was very complex.
Did he ever get stressed out?
Oh, yeah, I'm telling you.
You go sit on the porch with him?
Did he almost drop it? Because in the movie they said, Robin was going to drop it.
No, that's
Hollywood fluff.
Yeah, that's part of it.
But did you ever, sit on the porch with your dad and just, you let him just vent?
Well, we didn't sit on the porch, but we had a serious meeting about, some moves to make for the good of the family. And, and that was actually when we made the determination to offer. It wasn't because we were in a financial stretch or anything like that. It was the fact that, it made sense to try to settle the matter. And that's when we sat down and had the settlement agreement with Lowen. And we offered them 3 of our funeral homes, and then they were going to sell us Reman's insurance company, and then I think roll about 12 or 15 million into that, and that was going to be the basis of the settlement agreement. And then they breached that settlement agreement, which we also had a right to go expand into Jackson, Mississippi, and build a funeral home up there that we forwent, And so that was the one that's where they really got, the handshake deal from and all that. Yeah. Because we, made that agreement, executed on our side, and then they went to stalling on it.
All right.
Matt, $6 million in 1995 would be equivalent to $12,117,000.
So double.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But with the settlement money that you guys got, I mean, you dad implemented so much with it. I mean,
here again, the percent that, the companies by and large received, our portion, the lion's share of our portion. And the attorneys, of course, as I mentioned, got 45%. And as you might suspect, Uncle Sam got a pretty good cut. And so then there was the division. And so one of the first things that my dad wanted to do was form the O'Keefe Foundation, and formed an operating foundation to help, deliver Meals on Wheels to those that were infirmed and, couldn't get out to feed themselves, and then formed a little operational location for children with disabilities, and, supported Catholic charities and, African and minority right projects, and so on and so forth. And then when my mother passed, he had been instrumental in being the campaign chairman, co-chairman with Courtney Blossman to form the Walter Anderson Museum in Ocean Springs earlier. And so when my mother passed, he was trying to think of a way to honor her memory. And at that time, the ore pottery was being housed at the Biloxi Library, and he conceived the idea to build the O'Keefe Museum of Art, and wanted to have a particular element of it be dedicated to African American art and that sort of thing. And so that was the basis of, and man, he was excited. I mean, I remember when he conceived that idea, he called me in the middle of the night. And I mean, I don't think he slept for 3 days. He was so excited about that idea.
That's awesome.
He really was. I mean, and so, the family has worked hard to, it's still, an ongoing process, and we're working hard to kind of help.
I'm going to make you a metal print. I'll show you on my phone after this show, but I did I went there, I do photography, and I do metal print photography. So I shoot, but I add more contents. So I went there and shot the George Orr Museum from the left, and then I added George Orr walking down the stairs with his actual body, like it looks real. And then I did it at night where it had stars. And I was like, and I just, added it. It looks crazy, but if you watch it on the stairs coming down, I put George Orr walking down the stairs. And if you zoom into it, it's his actual face that I found on the internet, and I took a body and I made him walking down the stairs, which is really fascinating. I don't know, it's one of my favorite pieces. Then I did it black and white, but I took the sculpture in the front was blue, and I left it blue.
Oh, nice.
So I want to share that with you, and I will make you a metal print of it. Just
cool.
It was I love that building. I was sitting there one night. I was like, I want to shoot this. I was like, I want to sit here and shoot this, and I was thinking about how to put my touch on it, and I was like, I'm going to add George Orr. Yeah. And I don't know, but I'll definitely. It's one of my favorite buildings.
But I've been called a couple times by a couple different groups that are wanting us to talk about the movie and all like that, and so there is a lot of interest. One of them is comprised of elite funeral home operators that is a group of 60 or 70 that typically meet once a year and have about 40 or 50 attend.
You could be their guest speaker, man.
Yeah.
Well, you're the guy up there.
Well, when COVID hit, they had the three presidents of the three primary casket companies in the U.S. Come in and talk to them about the impact of what COVID did in the to the casket industry during the those years of that pandemic. And so that they like to stay on current event things. When the Queen died, the funeral director that was in charge of that entire process of that funeral.
Oh, so there's a podcast for the funeral community.
They had him.
That there is.
They had,
massive.
They had him, talk and then later came into the National Funeral Directors and talked about how they orchestrated the Queen's funeral. And of course, they're encouraging me to come talk about the movie.
I say you do it.
Do it, dude.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm hopeful that
you need to have your own podcast.
I'm honored that you came here to talk to us.
You need to have your own podcast. You need to have a Jeff O'Keefe history. You sit there and just
well, there is a I don't know
before you go with Jeff O'Keefe.
I don't know. I don't
nailed
know.
it. Copyright right there.
I don't know if y'all went to that website.
I did.
Of that we constructed.
Yeah, I'm the one that had the I'm the one that texts you with 125 million, and you're like, I got to jump right on that because I read the whole thing. You're like, oh, that's wrong.
Well, I was wrong still, and I don't know if it's been corrected yet. The original, when I was telling you about the combined verdict, I think I had mentioned it might have been 230, and I recently learned it was actually 260. I'd kind of lost track of that number, so it's easy to do. But anyway, one of the links was this gal that's a funeral director out in California, Caitlin, and she does podcast, and she did one about the.
You've told me about her.
About the low and well, it's on that website, and it's really well done.
I missed it. I went straight into the trial.
Yeah, you need to go to that and look at that podcast. She explains more about that actual trial in that podcast than
Well, have you had any of your own moments where you're like, man, they should make a movie about this?
Well,
and do you think that moment was going through your dad's head while this was going on?
No, I don't. I think that was the furthest.
He doesn't seem like he's a big movie guy.
Yeah.
I think that was the furthest thing from his mind while that was going on. But he did sign the rights to the story, and a year after the settlement, well, after the trial.
Did they buy that from him?
Yeah, they did. They bought it from he and Willie Gary, and that was Bobby Shriver, who is the nephew of John F. Kennedy. That's Eunice Shriver's son. And
Trivia.
Maria Shriver's brother that was married to Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Wow, yeah.
And all that. So he's the one that bought the rights.
Did they buy the full rights, or do you get the residual royalties like these? I always watch these.
Well, I don't get nothing. But, I mean, my father and Willie Gary, are receiving, royalties.
When, dude, they got that trial, they sold the rights, and they got money for that too, and they get a cut.
What about a sequel? Is there a sequel in the future here?
You'd have to ask Amazon about that.
But it'd be a good one.
I don't think so, too.
It's probably going to be, honestly, going from his dad and then following Gary. How many?
On to another trial.
That dude's probably got millions of dollars, billions of dollars in awards.
45%. He ain't hurting.
I mean, this is not. I mean, he has bigger. Did he have?
If he's living in, let me say this: if he's living in Stuart, Florida, he ain't hurting.
I tell you right now, if I was him right now, and he just won this $400 million case, his phone wouldn't stop ringing, dude. Like,
in the 90s.
Yeah, but actors. Oh, we got around. Who beat that case? And it's these phone calls coming in. We need this guy.
Well, and that's what drew Hal to his name was the fact that he had already been so successful. He had been on the Lives of the Rich and Famous, and on one of those segments. So he was already flying around on the Wing of Justice.
Did you ever get to fly on it?
I did. Yeah. I flew
was it big?
Yeah, man. It was a fine plane, man. I'm gonna tell you what. He was scooting around, and I think he was flying Evander Holyfield from Atlanta back and forth from Vegas for some of his fights, and he was doing pretty good.
Did he ever go like, "Hey Jeff, I got a club for the night. You going to come out with us?" Was it any of them? I mean, you don't have to get in the details of it, but it was like, "Hey Jeff, get out of your hotel room, get your jacket, get your clothes on. We're going out tonight."
No.
Okay.
No, but
I just thought.
But I will say,
I'm building in my head.
We did have a very nice party right after the trial down here on the coast, and he was here for that. And Willie, I had hired this band called the Perfect Image Show Band, and so Willie, they performed at that house party, that my dad's house, and we set up a tent out in the back, and that's where that picture is of him holding his hand up and all. And but Willie is a very good singer, as he is a charismatic speaker.
Nice.
And he loves to sing "Stand by Me" when the night.
He's got a focus too.
So anyway, so he sang, and he liked that band, and he harmonized with them so well.
So
he flew them all down to Florida to his Christmas party, and
that was
on that topic though. Remember in the movie, the song that your dad listened to, and that did he really do that?
Tony.
Oh, dang it.
Tony. All three named Tony.
No, that
all three spelled different.
You know that settlement meeting where he started tapping that pen.
Yeah.
That never happened. We never. Now we did have a settlement meeting, but Ray Lowen was not there.
It's crazy how Hollywood
nor my mother was not there.
I mean,
in fact, the first settlement.
I liked it. I was like thinking,
Oh yeah. Well, no, he probably, Willie probably got Dad a little jazzed up along the way. Now I won't say he didn't.
You had to have. Did your dad and him hold a long-term friendship?
Well, I think they had a real friendship that was forged in a common goal, and that's one of the things that I said in the Q&A when they asked me, well, what are some of your takeaways from the movie? I said, well, one is the small independent versus the big corporate, and I said, I think the other is the fact that you've got, a white man and a black man that are both successful in their own rights, that forged a friendship bound in a common goal of righting a wrong. And I think that comes through in the movie. It does for me. I mean,
it absolutely did.
Although, they don't, as I say, the movie kind of portrays my dad a little more downtrodden or financially challenged and all this to make the win even a bigger matter. But the reality is, he was an honorable man, well-respected businessman. I'm not going to say he didn't ever have a financial challenge, but it wasn't anything like what is projected in the movie.
Did your dad have an entourage?
No. Listen, my dad,
very simple, like very.
Yeah. And even after the whole trial, he never like bought a new car and did all the.
What was his car?
He had a Mercedes, but he had that before the trial, and so he never bought a new car or change, and he never really changed his lifestyle in any manner other than, he used to go just play a little recreational blackjack. I mean, I'm just talking,
Counting cards?
No, he wasn't. He wasn't a card.
That's the
counter.
movie. Jeffery O'Keefe.
He wasn't a card counter.
Counting cards.
But we did have one in the family that got, suspended.
Well, look, you guys, you can go check out this movie. It's on. Tell them it's on Amazon Prime.
It's
free, I think, right?
Yeah, if you're a subscriber to Amazon Prime, the movie's free, and I believe they actually offered a free membership to be able to watch the movie, to encourage people to watch it. And so it is being shown in the movie theaters, but that's going to be in Los Angeles and New York City.
And Biloxi, if you're really, really lucky.
And the purpose for that is...
I feel special.
I believe, it's
a memorable moment.
They have aspirations of a possible, award contender.
And it's got to get nominated for the Oscars.
And it did a great job of humor and seriousness because it rode that line to where you're laughing and you're kind of like you're emotionally invested. So,
but to be able to qualify, you've got to have, so much of a theatrical release, and so that's what they're doing in New York City and in Los Angeles, and when COVID hit, it kind of the revenues for movies on streaming services escalated to where it's like 3 times greater than in the movie theater.
Damn.
And I don't know that it's receded back much. And that's hence why they have the writers and the actors strike going on, is because I think perhaps a lot of their revenue association has been stronger with the movie theaters over the streaming. I don't know the details of the strike, so I can't really talk to that. But my understanding is that the writers' portion of it has been resolved, and they're trying to get resolution.
Yeah, what's that one nanny in the 90s TV show?
Fran Drescher?
She's the president of it.
Screen Actors Guild?
Yeah, for the actors. She's the one. I seen some interview, and they're like, it wasn't enough money or something, but she's going to be working on it. But they're like in a trial themselves.
Yeah, I'm not up on that.
You know who I'm talking about with the really strange voice?
No.
Fran Drescher.
Yeah, like the
Watch it.
I'm not up on that. Right?
But so then here's another thing before we finish this. We got a place up in Jackson called Morningside. Could you reach out to Hal for us, and you can come on the podcast, and we got a travel gear. We can go film it at Morningside.
Yeah, well, I could, but you might want to consider Mike Cavanaugh. He was one of the he was actually my dad's 30-year attorney. So Mike he's a wealth of information, and of course he worked with Hal in the trial. And Hal was hired for the trial in Jackson, and they're both attorneys. So I mean, that'd be a good combination if you could get him.
I left that movie, and the first person I called was Scott, and I was like, "You did stuff in the casinos, he was in the in the 90s." I was like, asking if he knew the guy, and you, and he's like, "Yeah," and then they all ran around together, and he's just like, "Yeah, no, guy's been amazing attorney for years." I mean, honestly, that was cool, but I was just fascinated because I'm like, "Oh, wait." Scott in his Alec Capri days, or with Mr. Rick Carter. And because me and Scott's one thing about us is we'll have a bourbon, he'll tell me stories. And you asked about family stuff. Me and Scott, so right here is your, that's the game he gave me today, is a backgammon.
All right.
And we play that together sometime. I always beat you, Scott. But, we'll have a cigar and we'll have a bourbon, and we'll sit there and he'll tell me stories from the 70s, 80s, 90s, early 90s in Biloxi. How to get stuff done. Just fascinating stories. You asked, that's what I enjoy. Like, I love my friends. My friends are great. But if you ask me if I'd rather be hanging out with my parents and hearing stories, yeah. I mean, that's when we had Mr. Lewis on, and I know Mr. Lewis just got put in the hospital, but I tried to text you, bud. You need Mr. Lewis, I'm with you, bud. Just let me, come back on the podcast. But I'm fascinated with Mr. Lewis' story. Met his wife in New Orleans.
And I take my hat off to you guys, because you've heard me say on your first, time I was here and this second, it's so important to just put that tape on and interview people and pick their mind, learn, just get these stories and memorialize them. And that's what you guys are doing. I mean, y'all are doing that day in and day out. And I mean, that's just so awesome. I mean,
you got a traveling kit. You can just tell us, call us up. We can pull it off. We can film the funeral home. You find somebody interesting, well, all four. We'll get a guest on, and you come on with us. You'd be the historian of the show. So
be on our entourage.
Yeah, you could be Kathy and Susie's kids / O'Keefe.
There you go. That sounds.
But I appreciate it, man. You're right, though. That's something that me and Matt do, and then Garrett too. We do enjoy hearing stories. Joke's on y'all, man. Like, I get to hear cool stories. I feel like I'm gaining knowledge. I'm not, sometimes I get confused on certain things, but like I come back and fascinating to hear stories though. Like, I'd rather hear stories than pick up my phone and somebody's dancing on TikTok. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm tired of watching grown men dance on TikTok and women dance on TikTok.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
never going to stop.
But that's what I'm seeing. So I'd rather sit here and I'd rather honestly sit with Scott and then let him tell me about the casino world.
Yeah, I was on the state board of funeral service up in Jackson that licenses and regulates funeral homes. So I was up in and around the Capitol quite a bit, and I remember Scott, working up there as a lobbyist all the time.
Did he have a ponytail?
He didn't have a ponytail that I can recall at that time.
If you want.
Yeah.
But anyway, but I know he spent a lot of time around that. He knew the ins and outs of what was going on inside that.
It's so fascinating, man. Like, me and Matt went up to Morningside and stayed at a spot, and it was so cool because that place, you could just feel the people and the stories, and I think that was a fascinating thing that I really enjoy. Like Matt, you had a blast. We're sitting on the patio just hanging out. Scott just hanging out, telling stories, whatever. He's just got. I love that. I'm at 37, so I would say in my 20s I didn't really care that much about stories, and I regret that. I was thinking about my grandma the other day. Like, my grandma worked in the seafood industry, and she peeled shrimp, and my grandfather was Fabian Duron, so his dad did the boxing. My grandpa was like, and my grandma would come home, and they had a place in Lemoyne, and she'd sit at the end of her, was it the Brownwood island? Wasn't these fancy marble islands? It was like the fake wood, and she'd sit at the end of it with her chairs, and she would pull a cigarette out, and she would just grab her 6-pack of beer and put salt on it, and she would listen to like Celine Dion and Otis Redding and Fat Dominoes, and like she smelled like shrimp, okay, but she is all in white. I'm thinking shrimp boats. I want to tell she was 5'2", had these long cigarettes, and she would just listen to music, but she always had a smile on her face. Yeah. And she peeled shrimp all day long, no matter what. I got home, and it was I'd always stay at my grandparents. Grandparents were, I'm pretty sure I think is at my age, and this goes to all the grandparents in my kid's life. Calling y'all out right now, you better spend a lot of time with my little boy. Because that was the most memorable times for me, was running around, getting free popsicles. But that lady gave that life to me. I remember bringing me to Toys R Us and buying me my first RC car.
Toys R Us wasn't in there, was it?
No, in Biloxi. Remember Toys R Us where Ashley Furniture is?
Oh, yeah.
That's my grandma used to take me there. And
okay.
Used to have to go pull a card, and I'd wait. She's like, "You ready to spend? You got $50."
You don't spoil your grandkids.
I'll try.
It's fun, but I would remember that. Like, I would get in the car with her, and she had like a Monte Carlo, and she would just, she was just cool, and she would always like take part of her check, like say she would take like $10 out of her check a week, and it would go to the grandkids.
Cool. And
she would just take me to certain things. I couldn't, not every day, but you had to eat her shrimp food because she always got discounts. So I didn't eat a lot of fast food. I ate nothing but whatever the shrimp factory had or the people on the docks gave. So
I had a sister who picked shrimp down at Dejan's.
I used to go over there and hang out. I used to go sit in the floor and talk to her. They let me go back there and watch her.
Well, I actually worked an insurance debit early on that involved going around the point and going in some of those shrimp picking place, the little buildings where all the ladies were just lined up, just picking those shrimp, and so I remember that.
Shout out to my Aunt Alice too. My Aunt Alice still she ran with my grandma. They used to all carpool together, and they'd meet and have this one van. Sometimes they'd work to Mobile, sometimes they did in Biloxi, but they were like this legit ladies that honestly I probably need to get Aunt Alice on here and talk about peeling shrimp.
Well, and the oysters too. You remember those huge mounds of oysters all over that point.
Yeah,
and they used to stink to high heaven, all those oysters, and all of the Yugoslavs would always say, "That's the smell of money."
The impression right there.
Oh, yeah. That's
Slavic Lounge is proud right now. Shout out to Slavic Lounge.
Yeah.
They do weddings.
Yeah, they do it all.
Is it Mike Kovacevic runs it, huh?
He's an integral part.
Yeah, big time. So if you want to get married, that's a very nice place. That's one of my favorite places to have do the wedding.
No, it's just a great venue.
Yeah, nice bars, good people.
Oh yeah,
everybody's related. We're all related.
They stay booked. It's a very great place to, and it's got great space for events, and so whether it's on the backside, if it's a little smaller event, or out front.
Biloxi or Ocean Springs, what's your favorite funeral home? If you had to pick one.
Well, here again, you're taking me back to history, so I'd have to say Ocean Springs just because that's where it all began.
Have you ever thought about just turning it to an Airbnb?
I've got staff that are just insisting that I turn that into a wedding venue. They say, "Man, this thing would be so beautiful." I actually had a sister who got married in that facility, years ago. After
probably target that to a certain class of people that were like getting married in a funeral home. There's probably a bunch of people that
we're right by my parents' spot is right by Lazy Oak. We're not too far off. So if you ever want to do that, maybe I want to stay in there.
Yeah.
it's not haunted. There's no way it's haunted.
No, I don't think so.
No.
You know, my dad and his two brothers were born in the front room of that house.
You told me that.
Yeah. My grandmother gave birth to him in there, and you know, I asked her, "Well, Nano," I said, "How did y'all, you know, handle giving birth without any modern anesthesia?" And she said, "Oh." He said, "You know, when the pain got bad, they'd just reach over and grab a rag and pour a little ether on it and hold it up to your nose until you almost passed out." And I said, "Well, no wonder we're all half crazy."
That's simple.
No, I mean, yeah. Looking, we love to have you back on part 3, 4, 5.
Yeah, man.
I love your stories. I think we do have a travel set. This is something that you kind of inspired me with this because me and you know, we've talked on the phone from time to time. And yeah, I started seeing, I was telling Matt, I know the first time I did it, I didn't tell anybody. I went and found Mr. Lewis and shot it. And then
Mr. Lewis is a great guy.
And I shot it. I shot it at Fly Llama. Shot it to Fly Llama, but I shot it there. And I told him I was coming in. And Mr. Lewis, you know, that's his bar. And as he's older, everybody's like, "Well, you need to do it with Mr. Lewis." And I'm like, I just don't need to worry about this gear. I need to take our old gear
and just do it.
And I did it. And then right when I did it, I put it out. And first two people to message me was Matt and Garrett.
Oh,
They're like, "This is awesome." And it was a conversation at a bar.
There you go.
Which conversation is going to go everywhere, but it was just ideas and put it out. And it was a really cool podcast. But we have to, there's some people like, I mean, can't come to us that I feel, you know, honestly, if you're a CrossFit guy, you're going to come to us. But if you're like a Mr. Lewis that's older, got stories, doesn't like leaving Biloxi or Ocean Springs, don't like leaving your driveway. I mean, if I want to do them stories.
That's what I encourage. You know, right when we went to Bay St. Louis, one of the first people I looked up was Charles Gray. I mean, he was one of the foremost historians of Jackson County, and he literally built and populated the historic museum over there. In fact, shortly after we acquired Edmund Fay over in Bay St. Louis, they had the Charles Gray Day, and they dedicated the entire day to him. I tried to get a ticket. They were sold out. And so I missed that particular get-together, but I quickly called him and said, "You know, Mr. Charles, I need to sit down with you and just talk to you." And so we set up an appointment, and I sat down with him, took that phone right there, put it on record, and he and I sat there and we talked. You know, of course, he prearranged his funeral right there when we were talking, but he, you know, he sat there and told me so many fascinating stories, and I was so proud to be able to donate a copy of that to the Historic Museum. You know, he passed about a year and a half after that, but that was so important to me, and I feel like to the community, for him to have been able to give that story, you know, it was just so fascinating. I mean, he had some absolutely wonderful life experiences and talked about them at length in that meeting. And that's what you guys do day in and day out. And I'm telling you, there's just no substitute for that. I mean, that's what it's all about.
Appreciate it, man.
We appreciate it.
Is bringing out these memories from people.
And you've been able to add a couple of good ones, so we appreciate you,
thank
man.
you for having me.
You've always been supportive of us.
And I like saying, like, when we had Peter, it was cool, you know, because for him that was such a long one, but that was, like I said, like, it was just so cool. Me and Matt were kind of, I mean, we were fanboying after end of it because we were like,
oh, he's got some great stories.
I know, but we're like fanboying, like, it's way cooler than TikToks. Let's go back to, and people need to like really dive in and understand. It's just weird. Like, you don't really have these stories anymore. Now it's face tattoos and
YouTube videos,
dancing TikToks and
Pokemon cards,
street fights.
Yeah, you can't understand.
Yeah,
I don't know. We
yeah.
don't know.
We're
just having fun and smiling.
It's a big myriad out there, but I'm telling you, these people, and you should think about, you know, who you can talk to, and having that, you know, element of mobility where you can go to them, even that raises the bar.
I got a book bag. I got a book bag that's slim fit, full in, already pre-ready. I rode my scooter. I have this custom built scooter. I rode the book bag on my scooter because I feel like if I don't have the bag on me, then there's no point in having the bag.
Yeah.
So I had to make it where we have it where, and we use our phones for this, but we have to have it where Matt can have it on his back and it's not too heavy. Now with this one, where you're just holding the mics. We're not giving you stands. You're just holding the mics, and it's
quick. It's a condensed show.
But you enjoy it. I mean, we did the Bacchus one.
Yeah, it's been good. It's been fun.
All right. Well, look, I know last time I was here, it was live.
Yeah.
This time it's taped. Just make sure you edit me up good, okay?
We're gonna make you look great, dude.
All right, well, guys, if you need burial insurance, go see Bradford O'Keefe.
Burial advice,
Yeah,
I mean anything.
If you just want to, ideas on if you want to do like Matt was saying, Viking funerals. I think that's going to be a thing that O'Keefe's are bringing in.
Yeah. Then always, if you're bored and you're looking for something good to do, go watch The Burial. It's out. It's on Amazon Prime.
And shout out to Jeremiah O'Keefe for winning a case and sticking with it because anybody could have quit.
There was a lot of tenacity.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Jeff, we appreciate it.
Thank y'all so much.
See y'all next time.
You, man.